All right, welcome to a live episode of Mike's Money Picks. So today we are going to be live at drafting a Best Bowl Mania team on Underdog. That is their flagship college football best ball contest. But we are also going to be talking about some advanced strategies, some kind of, little more in the weeds, more in-depth takes and tips and strategies that you can use to help win your Best Bowl Mania drafts. So what we're going to do, we want to give everybody out there watching an opportunity to draft with us as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to join a draft lobby on Underdog. And then while we are waiting for the draft to fill, that is going to be when we decide to, kind of talk about the strategies, talk about, the other specific stuff that's going on. So that is going to be the plan here for this show. And hopefully anybody out there who wants to draft with us will be able to get in the draft lobby and draft with us. And hopefully we'll be able to have plenty of time to talk about, everything we want to talk about in terms of strategy and the in-depth stuff going on here in college football best ball. If you're watching this on recording, obviously you're going to get plenty of strategy tips and everything like that going on as well. So hopefully this format will kind of work out well for everybody for what they want. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and enter the Best Bowl Mania draft room. And, it appears we were waiting for one person, so this might not actually take all that long. So one thing that I did want to talk about in terms of advanced strategies was the ability to backdoor stack here in these Underdog rooms. And so what I mean by that is I think that a lot of people in these drafts, at least from what I've seen, are not placing that big of an emphasis on stacking. But I do think that it is going to be something that you are going to want to have at least a little bit of exposure to in your lineups because of the fact of the way the playoff schedule works. Basically in weeks 12, 13, and 14, the playoff weeks in these Underdog best ball tournaments, it's almost like a DFS contest. So you're going to have to come in the top, 2 out of 10 or 1 out of 10 or whatever it may be for the specific tournament you're in week 12 and week 13. And so you're going to want your lineup to look like a DFS lineup for those 2 or 3 weeks, I should say. So you're going to want to have a little bit of game stacks. You're going to want to have a little bit of team stacks, and you're going to want to hope and pray that those stacks hit it big and you're able to come out on top in your lobby. And so what I mean by the concept of a backdoor stack is a stack that you can get very late in a draft that you're not really kind of planning on it. You're not really intending to go for. And it's just one that you kind of get organically throughout the draft. And so one that I wanted to mention right off the jump is Arizona State. So you can get their quarterback, Sam Leavitt, at pick 212. They have a very soft playoff matchups. And when you look at their receiving core, they've got Jordan Tyson that you can draft. Cam Scatabo, the running back, is a guy you can get. Marqueston Douglas, the Florida State transfer, is expected to start at them at tight end. So I just think that you can get a very, skinny Arizona State stack late in drafts. And they are also playing against Arizona in week 14. And so basically, you think about all these, high-powered Arizona teams. They're going to have Teteroa McMillan. They're going to have Noah Fafita. They're going to have Montana Lamonius Craig. You could kind of end up with a game stack if you have one of those guys, and then you decide to go even further and add the Arizona State backdoor stack. That's just one example of it. There's plenty more as well. Also, when it comes to the concept of stacking, I would much prefer my tight end to be stacked than unstacked. Just pretty much because you think about with a lot of these tight ends, if you're not going to be drafting Gadsden or Keithy, how these tight ends are going to score points is going to be by scoring touchdowns. And so basically, if I know that I'm getting a tight end and that tight end is going to be scoring points by scoring touchdowns, then I'm going to want their quarterback because that means their quarterback is throwing touchdowns as well. So one stack that I've been pretty big on so far is Taywin Green and Luke Haas, as well as Justin Jolly and Grayson McCall. Those are just 2 examples of it. But that tight end position is the one that I want to make sure I go out of my way to get stacked more often than not. Especially like with mobile quarterbacks. Like another example of this would be Garrett Oakley with Avery Johnson at Kansas State, because Oakley's pretty cheap in drafts, and we know Avery Johnson's a dual threat, but like if Oakley were to have a big game, it would be because he caught 2 touchdowns, and that would mean that Avery Johnson threw 2 touchdowns, and Avery Johnson throwing 2 touchdowns, in addition to what he provides with you running the football, means that Avery Johnson's going to be having a big game as well. All right, so that's just kind of a little bit about some advanced strategies. We're going to talk through this more as the draft goes on. But we are in the room now, and it has started, and it's a pretty loaded room. There's a good amount of like touts in this room, if I must say so. You got Justin McMahon, Fear My Turtle, Eric Bimeford, the founder of Spike Week. So pretty loaded lobby, and we've seen 4 picks go by. I got pick 11, which is not my favorite spot. I'm yet to get the number 1 overall pick here in Best Bowl Mania, which kind of makes me a little salty. But anyway, we've seen 5 picks go off the board. Gordon, Gabriel, Milroe, Burden, Avery Johnson went pick 5, and Garrett Green went pick 6. So this appears to be a very quarterback-heavy, quarterback-eager room, because we're looking at pick 7, and Tedero McMillan has not gone yet. Amari Hampton has not gone yet. And those are 2 guys that I like quite a bit, if I'm being honest. Tedero McMillan is a guy that I would not let slip outside the top 5 picks. Amari Hampton is a guy that I would probably be interested to draft right around that 7-8 pick. And so as McMillan goes 7 and Dart goes 8, Amari Hampton's still on the board here at 9. If Hampton falls all the way to me at 11, that feels like an easy pick. If not, I think I'm going to look to get Nico at 11, just because of the fact that with this being a very quarterback eager room, I don't think that any of the round 3 quarterbacks are going to be available coming back to me. And I don't really want to sit looking with a team where Cam Ward, Brady Cook, Haynes King, Garrett Nussmeier, where one of those guys ends up being my first quarterback. So we are on the board now. Hampton went pick 9. Giddens went pick 10. Pretty expected there. So I'm going to scoop up Nico Iamaleava at pick 11. I do believe I pronounced that correctly. If anybody knows anybody wants to correct me, let me know in the chat. I think Iamaleava is the correct pronunciation though. So anyway, waiting on the guy here at the turn, and I've got my quarterback, and I do not think that Tennessee has a playoff bye. So that's another bonus. And he takes Neal and Jefferson. He seemed to have a very similar strategy that I did, where he didn't want to get left out on the quarterback bandwagon. So what I'm going to do, I'm personally not a huge fan of either Tez Johnson or Evan Stewart at wide receiver. I really like these second-round running backs. I really do. I don't think there's a significant fall-off from these guys with the guys you can even get late in the first round. So I'm going to go with Phil Maffa here at the 2-2. And really, I'm going to use Maffa as like my anchor running back. Like, I am probably not going to take another running back for a few rounds unless one just screams off the board in terms of value. We talked about this on the Basic Strategy show that was released Monday. Go check that out if you have not already. But we talked about I think the running back position is deeper through the middle of the draft than any other position. And so if you're able to get one really good running back, I think you can wait quite a bit before you get your second, third, fourth running back. And we also mentioned how I really like late round wide receivers and tight ends. So those are going to be what I'm going to look to build through late in the draft, and look to catch up on running back through the middle of the draft. All right, now let's go ahead and get caught up on bye weeks. So Clemson has a week 3 bye for Phil Maffa. Clemson also has a bye in looking at my cheat sheet here, I do not see their second bye. Hold on. Week 9. Okay. And then my other pick was, 3 and 9 for Maffa. And Nico, that's Tennessee. They do not have a playoff bye. They have a week 9 bye, which is actually pretty uncommon. That's good news. And then they have a week 5 bye. Also, the tools that I have been using, I'm going to make sure they're linked in the description, but they're the cheat sheets from Spike Week. They have 2 great cheat sheets that have all the playoff matchups as well as the entire buys on one sheet. And so I have used those, quite religiously in these drafts, because it's so important to make sure that your buys are lining up, especially if you plan on going only 2 tight ends or only 4 quarterbacks or only 4 running backs. Like, you're really going to want to make sure that your buys don't double stack. And like I've said from the jump with this Best Bowl Mania, with all the underdog contests, you're really going to want to be on the up and up on whether or not any of your guys have a week 12 or week 13 bye. So, using those 2 tools as you draft can significantly help with that. And through 2 rounds, I have gotten 2 guys who do not have the dreaded week 12 bye, which I think is a big part of making good early round picks. All right, so after I took Maffa, we're getting a little bit behind here for the audio audience if you're listening on Spotify. After I took Maffa at 14, Tez Johnson, Jaden Ott, Darius Taylor, Kyron Drones, Evan Stewart, Jackson Arnold, Thomas Castellanos, Jordan James, and Taj Brooks have gone. And then the last pick of the second round is Shedeur Sanders. I got to be honest here. The one guy in this round that I have drafted 0 of is Shedeur Sanders. I just think that really what happened to Colorado down the stretch last season is really just a red flag from his fantasy prospects. As the season went on, as that offensive line got banged up, as he got banged up, the production went straight down, especially as they started playing better defenses. Now, the good news for him is that the defenses are quite soft in the Big 12, but this is a guy who is giving you 0 rushing. He literally ran for negative yards last year because sacks in college football count for negative yards, which is another bone that I have to pick with stat keepers, but that's for another day. And we saw how bad it could get last year. So I have not taken any of Shedeur Sanders because I don't think he is a top 2 round pick, and that's where he's being drafted. I think the same, I don't have any Dylan Gabriel yet either because, Dylan Gabriel typically goes in the first 3 picks, and I don't want to draft a quarterback who has a week 13 bye with my number 3 overall pick. So, it's just 2 guys that I have not been drafting. Now, to start the third round, we saw Oronde Gadsden, the tight end cheat code of Syracuse, go, followed by Xavier Restrepo and Kevin, a.k.a. Casey Concepcion. So really looking at this so far, this has been a pretty darn QB-heavy room. They've drafted all the expected quarterbacks to this point. And receivers going a little bit earlier as well. That's not shocking to me with the amount of, I don't want to say influencers. I don't think tout's the right word either, but the amount of industry guys like Justin McMahon, Fear My Turtle, Eric Beinfor, the guys who know this industry are going to be in this type of draft where it's super flex. They're going to be heavier on quarterback. They're going to be heavier on wide receiver. So that does not surprise me at all. So what that might allow me to do here is pick up some value at the running back position, or maybe end up with an early round 4 quarterback that I like. We'll see. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm in good position to stack Squirrel White with Nico Iamaleava because Squirrel White typically goes at the end of the 4th round. I'm not going to reach 10 spots in ADP just to stack Nico here. When that offense was at its best with Hendon Hooker, the Josh Heupel Tennessee offense, when it was at its best, they were spreading the ball around to multiple wide receivers. So I don't really see the need to get out of position and take Squirrel White with my 4th round pick. However, if he falls to me 12 picks past ADP in the 5th round, that would make me ecstatic. All right, so middle of the 3rd round has been Trey Harris, Quinshon Judkins, Haynes King, and Jalen Daniels. And, as expected, this is a lobby that looks so far to be heavy on quarterback and wide receiver. Damian Martinez went at the 3.8, Donovan Edwards at the 3.9. He really fell past ADP. Emeka Egbuka at the 3.10, and now I am on the clock. So basically, here's what I have to decide. Which is a bigger drop-off? Cam Ward, Brady Cook, and Garrett Nussmeier to each other, or LaQuint Allen or CJ Baxter to each other? Or do I go Manor? I'm going to go with LaQuint Allen. I've been pretty strongly convicted that LaQuint Allen is going to get fed this year. I know I mentioned that I don't necessarily feel the need to get ahead at running back, but I think when the lobby kind of gives you a great running back play like that, he's a great option there at the 3.11. And really, I'm planning on going quarterback here at the 4.2 because I do not think I'm going to like the options that are available to me at the end of the 5th round if everything goes according to plan. I don't think I'll be able to get Beck, Fafita, or Howard in the 5th round. And so maybe I could get Ewers or Leonard, but I actually would really prefer to take one of those as my QB2. So now I've got Cam Ward, Brady Cook, and Garrett Nussmeier. I am going to actually go slightly outside of the Underdog ADP rankings here. I'm going to take Garrett Nussmeier. So I heard this stat the other day. I cannot remember where I heard or saw this stat that last year, Jaden Daniels, if you took out all of his rushing, would have still been a top 10 quarterback in fantasy in college football. And so Garrett Nussmeier, getting the reins to this Brian Kelly LSU offense, to me, he has a ton of upside, even though he's not as mobile as Jaden Daniels, excuse me. And also, another thing that played a big factor is that he does have separate buys from Tennessee. Both buys are separate. He does not have the Week 12 bye either. Cam Ward with Miami would have given me a Week 12 bye. Brady Cook with Missouri would have had a bye week on Week 5 with Tennessee. So, really thinking ahead, trying to, optimize my schedule here. I think that Nussmeier was the optimal pick there. I think you could really make the argument that I could have taken a wide receiver in that spot. And I respect that. I definitely could have gone with A. Manor at the 311 and been happy, or even like Jeremy Bernard. But I've said this about receiver time and time again. I think there's a ton of wide receivers that are available like at the very end of drafts, and so I kind of like to build my wide receiver room through this like round 5 to 8 range, and then through like the round 18 to 20 range. So really thinking ahead here to what's going to fall to me, which is going to be around pick 60-ish. If Isaiah Bond falls, to me, that's an easy pick. I picked him on the draft on the show on Monday just because I think that this Texas offense with Quinn Ewers, it's going to support wide receivers. I think Isaiah Bond is going to be the best of the group. Deion Burks of Oklahoma, he has the dreaded Week 12 bye, but I would be fine taking him. I would be fine taking Higgins. With as quarterback heavy as this room has been, I would be ecstatic to get Quinn Ewers or Riley Leonard at the back end of round 5 or early round 6. So if I can't get one of those guys, I'm going to have to ad lib. But we'll play it by ear. We'll see how it goes because if those guys are going off the board, then there's probably going to be some value that is left ahead of them on the board. So we'll see how it plans out. So after I took Nussmeier, the rest of the 4th round, starting at the 4-3, aka pick 39, was Brady Cook, Travis Hunter, C.J. Baxter, R.J. Harvey, Gavin Sawchuk, Carson Beck, Jeremy Bernard, then Cam Ward went all the way at 46. That's a bargain for Fumra Turtle. We'll get Cam Ward at 46. Will Pauling, 47, and now we are at the last pick of the 4th round. So kind of a little bit of quick post-mortem on this round. There are 2 guys that I have like none of from this round, and that is Travis Hunter and R.J. Harvey. Look, with R.J. Harvey, we know how good he was last year. We know that this Gus Malzahn offense is going to run the football. They always do. They're always good at it. But the arrival of Penny Boone really concerns me because even if you're concerned about, Penny Boone, he's going from G5 to a Power 4 conference, he's not that fast. Well, Penny Boone is quite large. And so Penny Boone is probably going to be the guy who is in the game at the goal line. And if R.J. Harvey is losing those goal line carries, I have a hard time rationalizing picking him ahead of the running backs he's being drafted around, like Allen, Monangai, Baxter, Sawchuk. I just rather have all of them than Harvey right now, especially with KJ Jefferson also being an effective goal line runner. I just see Harvey's touchdown equity being quite low. And then, I've not taken any Travis Hunter, and I don't have any regrets with that. Look, the guy, when he goes to the NFL, he's going to be a corner. And I think that when push comes to shove, there's going to be some games where he might not play as a full-time wide receiver. And as good as he is, as much as we know that offense is going to throw the football, I don't want to draft a non-full-time player in the 4th round. And so I just don't have any Travis Hunter. I don't have any Shadur Sanders either. I have a ton of the supporting cast of wide receivers with Colorado. I've got some Will Shepard. I've got some LeJontay Wester, but I don't have any Hunter. I don't have any Shadur Sanders. I do have a lot of running back Dallin Hayden as well. I think that's a sneaky pick. Okay, so back to where we're at here in this day of the draft. Trey Wilson and Squirrel White went at the end of the 4th and start of the 5th, followed by Abu Sama, Deion Burks, and Kyron Lacey. Lacey would have been great if he could have fallen to me to kind of do an LSU stack, but I can kind of backdoor stack it. There's some secondary LSU receiving options that I can get later in the draft. I don't feel the need to stack Kyron Lacey, even though with Nussmeier being a pocket passer, I do think that it is optimal to try to stack Nussmeier. But I am sitting in a pretty good spot with the fact that both of my quarterbacks do not have a Week 12 bye, and they both have separate bye weeks. So I'm going to be able to count on those 2 pretty much week in and week out. Now, coming back to me, as we talked about, I got 3 picks now, whether or not it can get to me. Travion Henderson and Travis Etienne just went. Looking at the top of the board, it's all the guys we talked about. Brennan Presley, Isaiah Bond, Noah Fafita, Will Howard, Jaden Higgins, Quinn Ewers, Brant Keithy, and Riley Leonard. I'm going to need these guys right in front of me to start drafting kind of off the board because I want those guys. I don't want to have to try to take a running back or really reach here with my pick in the 5th and 6th round. Okay, so Brennan Presley and Noah Fafita have gone. 2 more picks before it gets to me. There went Riley Leonard. Dang it, I was actually really planning on taking Riley Leonard. But if the Bond Ewers stack opens the door for me, then I will gladly indulge in that. I also don't mind taking Brant Keithy right here. If I did that, I probably wouldn't take another tight end until like the very, very end of the draft, if I'm being honest. But anyway, let's see how it goes. We got one more guy before it gets to me. He took Jaquavius Marks. So I'm going to take the guy that we've kind of been talking about for a little bit here. I'm going to take Isaiah Bond. Very happy to get him. If I can do a Bond Ewers stack, or I don't mind taking Higgins or Keithy here with this pick. What would be a disaster is if he went Ewers, Keithy, I think would be a disaster. Well, he went Keithy and he went Higgins. Okay, so I'm going to get Ewers. And I have got my 3 quarterbacks. One of them is stacked with his number 1 wide receiver. I've got my 2 starting running backs. Now I need to make a definitive effort to target the wide receiver position in the 7th and 8th round, which I should not have a problem doing. There's a lot of guys in that range that I like. And even if I'm not able to get those guys, there's guys that I can get in the 9th and 10th round that I can feel pretty confident about. Like I've said, I think receiver is honestly the deepest position. I find it to be the easiest to catch up with in general at any area of the draft. There's to me, there's more wide receivers that I can talk myself into than any other position. And really, I think there's a lot of more home run wide receivers as you go later on in drafts than any other position. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about a guy that I might end up taking in this draft. I might not. But Jordan Moore at Duke. So this is a guy that you can get at pick 101 on average. He's a guy that I think has major home run potential this year, because when you think about Duke's offense last year, they had the slot guy, Calhoun, I believe was his name, and they had Jordan Moore, and they were really their only 2 wide receiving options. Well, Calhoun's gone. And so that really only leaves Jordan Moore as like the only viable pass catcher left. So he's going to get a ton of volume. They got a transfer in Malik Murphy, who is a very competent passer. And so you got a guy in Moore that Duke has a not so difficult schedule, in my opinion. And he's going to see a ton of volume in an offense that's going to be pretty competent. And so I really think that there's a ton of upside for Jordan Moore. And I think that really you can do that with a lot of guys as you look further down here on the board. There's a lot of guys that they're either very clearly going to see volume in an offense that can be better than people expect, or they are going to be the wide receiver 2 or 3 in an offense that we know is going to score a ton of points. And that makes them really easy to pick as well, because if the offense scores 7 touchdowns in a game, then odds are that their second or third wide receiver scores 1, maybe 2, right? So I just think that there's a ton of options at the wide receiver position that I can talk myself into as we go farther in this draft, even though in general, I do think that I would rather be catching up at running back than wide receiver. Wide receiver, there's just a lot of guys that I can talk myself into, and I don't mind that. Okay, so I kind of got off base there talking about strategy. Let's go ahead and recap the picks as we go through the 6th round. Will Howard went right after I took Ewers, followed by Kyle Williams, Basil Tootin, Chip Trainum, Jaheim White or Jalen White, the West Virginia White, Jaheim White. The Jalen White's Georgia Southern, I believe. They were similar colors. They also are both Jay White. Jaheim White at the 6'7", Miller Moss at the 6'8", Colin Lacey, Nick Singleton, and Rashad Owens, all the way pulling us up here to the end of the 7th round. And I got to say, it seems to be a little lighter on quarterback now. There's going to be some quarterbacks that might be some pretty good bargains for ADP that open themselves up, but I'm pretty set with the 3 that I've got, and especially with all 3 of them having useful bye weeks, not having to dread a week 12 bye. I'm feeling pretty good about the 3 that I have. So that leaves it that way. It looks like we're going running back heavy as well. As I mentioned at the start, to me, running back is like the position where really rounds about 6 through 9, you can get a ton of draftable running backs. Like the run that we saw here in this round of Tootin, Train, and White. All 3 of those guys are really solid in my opinion. Tootin's going to see a ton of volume. Trainum is going to see a ton of volume. He's also a great pass catcher. And then White is just an explosive player that in an offense that we know is going to run the football in West Virginia. And so you've got guys there that have every bit as upside as the guys that are available in like round 4. I think there's a definite tier break. Maybe I'm a little bit biased because I just took this guy, but I think that there's a little bit of a tier break after LaQuint Allen. I really don't take a whole lot of running backs in between the start of the 4th round and like the start of the 6th round. I don't really take a lot of those guys because those guys in the 6th round that we just mentioned, like Tootin, Trainum, White, Singleton, Scatabo, and Sampson have all now gone as well. I think that they're very solid plays as well. And so to me, that round 6, round 7 running back is a very viable range to target if you don't get one before round 3, because like I said, I do think that LaQuint Allen there at the end of the 3rd round, I think that that's where the tier breaks. Okay, so let's get caught up with the picks we mentioned. At the end of round 6, Scatabo and Sampson went. As we go into round 7, Nick Anderson, Cam Rising, Malachi Fields, and Caden Fegan have gone. So now we got about 4 more picks before it gets to me. As I mentioned, we are kind of locked in on taking a wide receiver. I don't kind of like that I've boxed myself in, but I do think that there's enough solid options that I don't mind it. And I definitely think we can work with it. I don't think that if I had it to do over again, I think that if Isaiah Bond were not the wide receiver that I had taken, I don't think I would have taken Quinn Ewers there right back. I would have gone with another wide receiver. If I hadn't taken LaQuint Allen in round 3, then I probably also would have taken one of those running backs that we mentioned there. But, one of these drafts, to me, they're a lot about the ability to adjust, the ability to kind of adapt to what's going on in the lobby around you. And so I like the value that I got with LaQuint Allen. I like the value that I got with Bond. I like the value that I got with Ewers. And so, I did draft a ton of value, but I really have pigeonholed myself here into I really need to get some wide receivers. So as we head into round 7, unfortunately, a lot of this lobby is kind of deciding to catch up on wide receiver as well. Kobe Hudson, Josh Kelly at 78 and 79, followed by Preston Stone at 80 and LeJonte Wester at 81. And Marcus Carroll goes at 82, meaning at pick 83, I am going to get Zachariah Branch of USC. And look, he is not a sure thing, but USC offense with Lincoln Riley, they're going to throw the football a ton. He is a very clear, explosive playmaker who really they're going to want to get the ball in his hands. They lost a lot of weapons from last year. And I just think the upside is through the roof. All right, now Ches Malusi went at the end of round 7. See, I really like the value that the quarterback, running back, and tight end positions I'm looking at right here, but I really feel like I need to get another receiver. And I don't mind that, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. So Tyler Shuck went with pick 85. Grayson McCall, it pains me to pass on you, but I do not need you. I'm going to go with Denzel Boston of Washington. It's a guy that we talked about on the last show, I believe, where I just really think that he's going to win Washington's wide receiver 1. I think that, the Jedfish offense, that has featured Tedero McMillan, Jacob Cowing, Dorian Singer. We've seen them have productive wide receivers. I think that Denzel Boston is going to be next in the line of that guy. And so he's another guy like Zachariah Branch that I just think the ceiling is through the roof. And really, when you think about drafting these best ball tournaments, you have to be searching for ceiling at the end of the day. You're only going to win the 10 grand or the 20 grand or whatever it is. You're only going to win that if you get some ceiling outcomes. And so I'm looking for guys whose ceiling is really high. And I think in Branch and Boston, I have gotten that. Whereas, there's some running backs that could be taken here, like Justice Haynes, TJ Harden. I think they're very takeable. Cam Cook of TCU is very draftable in this range as well. But, the receivers I got, I made up ground at the position that I needed to get ground made up at, and I got guys who have incredible ceilings for their position. All right, so let's get caught back up with who's been drafted. After I took Boston, we have Luke Lachey, Cam Cook, Colston Loveland, Caleb Jackson, and Eric Singleton. And now we got 4 picks left in round 8. Look, I am shocked that Grayson McCall is still on the board. Grayson McCall is a guy that I went on the show back in June with Josh Chevalier at CFF Guys on Twitter. Give him a follow. He does a lot of great work if you've not already. He was like Grayson McCall was like my ride or die quarterback on that show that we talked about. And that was for not just Power 4 like we see on Underdog, but for the whole landscape of college football, because he's going into an offense in NC State with a great offensive coordinator in Robert Anae. He's a dual threat. We've seen it at Coastal Carolina. We've seen him be super productive. I think that Grayson McCall is a home run pick. And if you're getting him as your 3rd quarterback, He does have the dreaded Week 12 bye, but you can put yourself in a position where your other quarterbacks that you have drafted don't have that Week 12 bye, and really that's a great value that the Bime Ford just got on him at pick 93. As I've been kind of hyping him up, of course he gets taken. So Grayson McCall, great value there at pick 93 in my opinion. So after Singleton went, here at the end of round 8, we had Justice Haynes, Grayson McCall, TJ Harden, and Connor Weigman go. Connor Weigman is an interesting one because Texas A&M does have quite the difficult schedule. They also have quite the difficult playoff schedule. But that's a guy that in the starts he got when he was healthy at Texas A&M, he looked really good. And he's a dual threat. He can rack up fantasy points. So Weigman is a big mystery. I would like to get him as my quarterback 3 if I were drafting him. That way you just kind of have like your home run hitter that you don't have to necessarily start every week. But I do think that Weigman is a really solid pick there in the 8th round at the quarterback position. Really, I love the 3 quarterbacks that I have, but I would not feel pressed if I still had to be drafting quarterbacks because I do think that Taylon Green, which by the way, Taylon Green was the last pick of the 8th round. I think that he's a very effective option as well. We know what this Arkansas offense has done with mobile quarterbacks the last few years with KJ Jefferson. Taylon Green at Boise State ran all over the place every now and then. He didn't do it every game, but every now and then he did. And so, he's a guy that also has a ton of upside, in my opinion. Corey Kiner going with the first pick of the 9th round, by the way. Like I've said, there's a ton of running backs in this range that you can take and feel pretty good about. Now, I've got a lot of flexibility now because I now have 3 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers. I don't feel the need to keep trying to catch up at wide receiver. I feel like I'm caught up. I also don't feel like I need another quarterback just yet, but we'll see what falls to me. I wouldn't mind taking a running back or a wide receiver. I also wouldn't mind taking a tight end. We mentioned stacking the tight ends earlier. Mason Taylor as a stack with Nussmeier looks really appealing right now. I don't have to take him anytime soon, though. Same deal with Amari Niblack at Texas. Look, I kind of don't get the price on Niblack. I think Niblack should be going earlier than he is simply because you look at what Jatavion Sanders did in this Steve Sarkisian offense last year. He was great. He was one of the best tight ends in all college football. And so Niblack is just kind of transferring in, hoping to take over that same role. And really, if you put Jatavion Sanders in here, he probably would go in round 7 or 8 if we could draft last year's Jatavion Sanders. So if Niblack is in fact that good, then he should be going way earlier than he is. So we've seen a little run on quarterbacks here in round 9. We mentioned Corey Kiner going with the first pick, followed by Jeremiah Smith and Jonte Cook, 2 young wide receivers with a ton of upside. John Mateer, Jaden Blue, DJ Uyunglele, Donovan Smith going, and then Antoine Wells Jr. and Jordan Moore. I really wanted Jordan Moore to fall to me. That's okay, though. I got one more pick before it gets to me. And I'm looking. And Jarquez Hunter just went. So I'm going to go with Jalen Noel of Iowa State. There we go. You're looking at a guy that is very clearly one of the top options in his offense. Definitely going to see a ton of volume. Really high floor receiver, which really probably is a guy that helps my expected advance rate on this team, considering that I have the boomer bust, Zachariah Branch, and Denzel Boston. I don't mind Jalen Noel. Also, with Denzel Boston, I forgot to mention this, Washington has the dreaded Week 13 bye. And so get another receiver to shore that up definitely is a solid strategy, in my opinion. Okay, now what should I do? I've got 13 seconds left. I'm back on the clock. I am going to take Montrell Johnson Jr. of Florida. So before the crowd comes with the pitchforks about me reaching a little bit or me taking a guy with a schedule as brutal as Montrell Johnson, hear me out. They don't have Trevor Etienne anymore. And really the kind of that backfield has been a backfield that rides the hot hand between Johnson and Etienne each of the last 2 seasons. And both of them have put up massive outings. And the problem was you never really knew which one it was going to be. Well, there's no Etienne now. And so if Johnson is going to be the guy that has those massive outings every time, then I think he's a really solid pick, no matter how difficult the schedule is. I think he's a pretty solid option just because of the amount of volume that he's going to see and the fact that he is my third running back. I'm not necessarily going to need him every single week to give me 30 points to feel pretty good. So feel pretty good about that pick of Montrell Johnson. In between my picks of Noel and Johnson, Chris Bell of Louisville, Parker Jenkins of Houston did in fact go. I do want to talk really quickly about a guy that went pick 100. That's John Mateer of Washington State. So Washington State, last year they had Cam Ward. A few years back they had Gardner Minshew when Mike Leach was the head coach there. Trying to rack my brain for who was in between Cam Ward and Gardner Minshew. I know there was one quarterback at least, but I can't think of who it is at the moment. Anyway, this is well documented as one of the most pass-happy offenses in all of college football, right? And they're going to throw the ball. They're going to throw the ball, even if they're up, they're down, whatever. Washington State playing essentially a Mountain West schedule this year, very easy schedule. The problem is we don't know who's going to start at quarterback, whether it's going to be Mateer or Zevi Eckhouse. All accounts in training camp are that Mateer is in the lead, but it's very much in doubt. And so to me, this is very much like a thought experiment, right? Like, where would you draft Mateer if you knew he was going to be the starter? Or where would you draft Eckhouse if you knew he was going to be the starter? The problem is I think Mateer, if he was the starter, name the starter today, I think he would go right around Tyler Shuck of Louisville. So like right around like pick, say, in this draft, Tyler Shuck went 85, but right around the start of the 8th round, like 85 to 90. And so basically right now you can get Mateer. He went pick 100 in this draft. That's about where he's going to go. You can get him there at a slight discount with the baked in risk that he might not start. And so there also becomes a really weird thought experiment here where if you really need a Hail Mary at the end of the draft, you really need a fifth quarterback, you're really looking to hit a home run, you can take Zevi Eckhouse, because if Zevi Eckhouse ends up being the starter, he's going to absolutely smash what his ADP is worth from the very end of the draft, because he's essentially free at the end of the draft right now. All right, so now let's get caught back up. So after I picked Montrell Johnson, Dominic Lovett, DeQuan Finn, that's quite early for DeQuan Finn, but I do like him a lot. I like that. I don't mind that pick at 112. It's a slight reach by ADP, but Finn's a good player. He's going to do well at Baylor. Elijah Badger, Jeremiah Hunter, Justice Haynes. I'm sorry, that's not Justice Haynes. That is Jamal Haynes of Georgia Tech. My bad. Followed by John Meredith, Lenora Sellers, Will Shepard, Jonah Coleman. And then to end the 10th round, Elijah Surratt. So pretty predictable, I guess you could say, room so far. The only real value on the board is Caden Prieskorn, which I would love to have Caden Prieskorn if he were to fall all the way to me, but I don't think he will. I think Caden Prieskorn is a really good value at tight end, because if we're being honest, the way the Lane Kiffin offense uses tight ends, with as talented as he is, the amount of success you're going to get for that offense, he's probably the tight end available after Keithy and Gadsden, who has the highest floor. I don't necessarily think his ceiling is as high as Gadsden or Keithy. I think those two guys are in a platform of their own. But Prieskorn's a pretty high floor tight end that you can get, and he was just taken here at the 121st pick, and his ADP is 110. So I really like Prieskorn as a tight end here in this range. Also, I do want to mention, I have not gotten them uploaded yet, but I am going to be publishing my Underdog CFB Best Ball rankings to my Patreon, patreon.com/Mike'sMoneyPicks. All you will have to do is go to the Patreon. If you're subscribed to the Patreon, all you have to do is go to the Patreon, download the CSV, go to Underdog, click this button that says rankings, and then upload the CSV, and you will have access to those rankings as you draft. So that way you do not have to sort it by ADP, because if I'm being honest, with the mess that spreadsheet is right now, I haven't finalized it yet. I'm kind of just going off the dome on where I think my player takes are, and just keeping it sorted by ADP. I do think the ADP is a valuable tool to use, though, but you do have to understand that it is a predictive tool and a reactive tool, not a ranker. So it's good for knowing who's going to be available at your next pick. It's good for knowing what has happened in previous drafts and what tends to happen, but it is not a tool to just simply say, hey, I'm going to take the guy with the highest ADP as he's on the board. That's not what it should be used for. All right, so I have got 4 more picks before it gets to me. And if you guys remember me mentioning after I took Nico, how there's options for backdoor stacking him. Well, one of them is coming up, Chris Brazell II, the Tulane transfer. If I could get him here at pick 131, that would be really solid, because then I would have Nico and Quinn stacked up, and then I would have the ability to stack up Nussmeier a little bit later. There's definitely some LSU receiving options that are available later, even though one of them just went. But I would like to be able to have these quarterbacks stacked. Well, one thing I kind of did, I didn't do it intentionally, but the quarterbacks that I've drafted, Nico, Nussmeier, and Ewers, they're all kind of pocket passers. Nico's a little bit mobile. He will score some points with his legs. Ewers is a reluctant scrambler. Every now and then he'll keep the ball, but really I've got 3 pocket passers. And so when you take pocket passers in this format, you really want to make sure you're getting them stacked up, in my opinion. All right, so now, unfortunately, my plan has been foiled because Chris Brazell went at pick 128. And so, you know what? I've already got Jalen Noel. Let's go ahead and take Rocco Becht as my 4th quarterback. That kind of fell in my lap there, and I'm not opposed to it. And then I'm going to want to take Mason Taylor as my tight end to stack with Garrett Nussmeier here at the start of the 12th round. The downside is there are 2 tight ends that I like a lot. One of them is probably going to be available for me. That would be Luke Hasz and Justin Jolly. I've drafted a ton of those 2 guys. I like them a ton, if I'm being honest. But, I'd rather make sure that I have the stack with Nussmeier. When you have these pocket passers, you want them stacked up. And like I said earlier, the tight end position, I want the tight end position to be stacked up as much as possible. So, if I have to reach a little bit, I have to go against my rankings a little bit. The one thing is with these best ball drafts, as you do a lot of them, you take guys like Hasz and Jolly a lot. You get them on other teams, and you don't necessarily have to feel like you have to take them on every team. And so I'm okay taking Mason Taylor right here. I'm pretty happy with that selection, how that played out. All right, so let's go ahead and recap it as we looked at the end of the 11th round. So Caden Prescorn went 121. That was the last one I talked about. Another late round quarterback that I like a lot went 122, and that is Josh Hoover at TCU. That guy was really effective as a starter. The Big 12, to me, if you were to ask me, hey, Mike, if you were only to take all your players from one conference, what conference would it be? I would very quickly tell you Big 12, because there's a lot of teams in that league that don't play a lick of defense, and TCU is one of them. So, you got a guy who's going to be in a lot of high scoring games. He's got Sonny Dykes as his head coach, proven good offensive mind that can score a lot of points. Like last year, they really weren't all that talented, and they were still scoring points. They still had a lot of, very viable fantasy performances from the running back like Amani Bailey, the quarterbacks, Chandler Morris, and then Josh Hoover. Like they're really just going to be a ton of fantasy points scored in that offense. And if Hoover keeps the starting job, he's going to be a really solid option. I really like that pick at 122. Jacoby George went 123, followed by Rocket Sanders, Xavier Henderson, Jake Brenningstool. CJ Daniels, we mentioned, went 127. So look, CJ Daniels is the Liberty transfer into this LSU offense. He was Liberty's wide receiver 1. I would not be shocked if he ends up being LSU's wide receiver 1. Like, honestly, Kyron Lacey is what he is. He's might just have the same role he had last year. And CJ Daniels could step into the Brian Thomas or the Malik Neighbors role in, the LSU offense. And I think there's a ton of upside in that pick. I hate that he went 127. I would have certainly considered him at 131 if he'd fallen to me. We already mentioned Chris Brazell went at 128, messing up my potential Nico stack. Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame running back, 129, like him a lot as well. RJ Maryland, 130. I took Rocco Becht, 131. And really, Rocco Becht is kind of a high floor player. we saw him have some big games last year in the Big 12, but they were kind of few and far between. But I like that I'm getting him stacked with Jalen Noel. I like that I'm getting a very, very easy Iowa State schedule, in my opinion. Like, they play Iowa in the non-conference, I'm pretty sure. But, other than that, their schedule is pretty darn easy. We mentioned that none of these Big 12 teams play any defense. And then in the playoffs, Iowa State has Cincinnati, Utah, Kansas State. That's only one good defense in Utah. So feeling pretty comfortable with that, getting Rocco Becht at 131. Jaquindon Jackson and Montana Lamonius Craig went 132. Montana Lamonius Craig, the guy that took him, it's most definitely a reach based off of ADP, but he's a guy that I really like. We've seen this LSU or this Arizona offense support 2 wide receivers in previous years, whether it was Jacob Cowing and Dorian Singer, and then it turned into Tedroa McMillan and Jacob Cowing last year. And now Jacob Cowing's gone, Tedroa McMillan's still there. And so Montana Lamonius Craig is the guy that everybody expects to step into that second wide receiver role. And if he takes it, if he succeeds with it, then he's certainly worth, his ADP at 213. I don't know if I would have necessarily taken him at 133 like this guy did, but I really do like him, and I really would be willing to take him ahead of ADP. Then I took Mason Taylor at 134. After that, we saw Carnell Tate, Brennan Sorsby, another solid late round quarterback selection, in my opinion. Quali Conley, LJ Martin. I am not taking LJ Martin anytime soon. Apparently, he's going to miss the first 4 games, and it's not what you want if you're playing best ball. Followed by Daniel Jackson, Dorian Singer, Justin Jolly finally went 141. Jordan Waters of NC State 142, Terrence Ferguson, and Cade Klubnik to end the 12th round, and then Luke Haas to start the 13th round. I think Jolly and Haas ended up being incredible values in this draft, and I really do like both of them. Theo Weiss going 146. I do believe the guy that drafted Theo Weiss, no, he is not. I thought the guy that drafted Theo Weiss was also the guy that drafted Luther Burden. I think there is some value in if you draft Luther Burden, taking Theo Weiss later, or if you take Tedroa McMillan, taking Montana Lamonius Craig later. I think there's value in doing both of those because those are the 2 guys who are such target monsters that if they were to get hurt, or if a team were to go into one game and just say, hey, we're going to bracket this guy all game long, and we're not going to let him beat us, then there would be very clear beneficiaries. With Burden in Missouri, it would be Theo Weiss. With Arizona and Tedroa McMillan, it would be Montana Lamonius Craig. I think that they're very valuable as handcuffs, and I think that if you do draft McMillan or Burden, I think that getting Weiss or Lamonius Craig later in drafts is a very, very solid strategy. All right, we're getting close to my pick now. After Weiss went Katron Allen, Cedric Irvin, Jack Belling, Malik Benson, Roman Hemby, and Kobe Prentice. And so what I am looking at here is kind of a mess, if I'm being honest. Kind of a mess. Okay. So I got one more pick before it gets to me. I'm going to be taking Kelly Akraihi of Mississippi State if he falls. I really don't like a lot of the other options available to me at the top of the board. Dang it, Kelly Akraihi just went. It's almost like he heard me say that. Okay. I got it. I am going to take Jordan Hudson of SMU. And the reason why is because SMU is a pretty productive passing offense. I think that Hudson could end up being their number 1 wide receiver. And if that happens, then I'm feeling pretty good about taking him there in the 13th round, honestly. All right. So now it's going to come right back to me in 2 picks. I got to have a plan for that. So I've taken a lot of Nathan Carter at running back. I really have. I don't mind that idea. Oregon State. Who does Oregon State play in the postseason? Air Force, Washington State, Boise State. That is a soft list. I'm considering Anthony Hankerson right here. I'm considering Jadarian Price of Notre Dame right here. Nathan Carter of Michigan State. I think Michigan State's going to be a little better this year. You know what? I'm going to go a little off the board. So be it. I'm going to take Anthony Hankerson of Oregon State. I kind of don't want to get behind at running back because, like I've said time and time again, I feel comfortable taking these late round wide receivers. And so let me put myself in a position with my roster where I can take the late round wide receivers, right? And to do that, I kind of have to be ahead at running back. I have to be ahead at quarterback. And so taking Anthony Hankerson there, I took him over the likes of Jam Miller, Jadarian Price, Nathan Carter, Devin Maccabee, Nate Noel. Look, I think Hankerson's going to be the starter for Oregon State. They have a very easy schedule. They're basically a Mountain West team this year. They really rode the workhorse Damian Martinez last year until the one game where he fumbled and they benched him for a long, long time. However, it is a brand new head coach this year for Oregon State, but I would expect there to be not a whole lot of switching in what they're doing, especially with them being a program that is in flux without a conference. So I feel pretty good about getting Hankerson there. I'd like Jadarian Price of Notre Dame. I think Jeremiah Love is more talented. I think if I had to handicap it today, I would rather have Jeremiah Love. But in the bowl game, Price got every bit as much of work as Love did. And if that's going to be a committee, there's going to be games where Price comes through, or if Love gets hurt and it becomes no longer a committee, then Price is going to be a really solid option. So I don't mind Jadarian Price. I've drafted a lot of Nathan Carter already. I got to be honest, when you play best ball, you draft a lot of teams. You kind of think about your overall portfolio while you're drafting. And I have a lot of Nathan Carter, and I don't necessarily want to be the guy sitting with 50% Nathan Carter. So I'm kind of comfortable with my selection of Anthony Hankerson there as my fourth running back. All right. So anyway, let's talk it out with where we are at now. So after I took Hudson, Blake Shapen was taken with the last pick of the 13th round. Slightly early for him, but again, kind of like what we said with some of these other quarterbacks, that's an offense that we know is going to throw the football a ton. The volume's going to be there. It's just a question of how many points they're actually going to score. Bryson Nesbitt going to start the 14th round. I took Hankerson, followed by Drew Aller. Oh, that seems early for Drew Aller. Drake Dabney, Aiden Childs, Allie Jennings, Oscar Delp, Jacoby Lane, Jam Miller, Tyler Warren, and Nate Noel. In this round, I'm still not sold on Oscar Delp. We talked about this on the Monday show, but like the University of Georgia, if they didn't felt like they needed somebody to come in, they wouldn't get somebody to come in at any given position because they just have 5 stars everywhere, right? And they went out and they got Ben Urasek in the portal at tight end. And in the games where Bowers was out last year, Oscar Delp didn't do a whole lot. And so if they felt like they needed help at tight end, they went out and got Urasek. I'm inclined to believe that Urasek's going to play a lot. And I would much rather take Urasek at his ADP than Delp at his personally. Tyler Warren I do like a lot, though. I was kind of hoping and like an outside hope that he would fall all the way to me at the end of the 15th round. This is an offense that uses a ton of tight ends. Last year they had Theo Johnson. Well, they don't have Theo Johnson anymore. So Tyler Warren is a guy that should see a ton of targets. They also lack playmakers on the outside, in my opinion. And so, tight end Tyler Warren could see a ton of targets. Devin Maccabee was taken with the last pick of the 14th round, followed by Ashton Daniels to start the 15th, Eric McAllister, Sam Brown, and Jadarian Price. Kind of as we end up in the middle of the round here. I could see an argument if somebody wanted to tell me that I should have taken Jacoby Lane. He went 164. Knowing that I already had Zachariah Branch, if I took Jacoby Lane, I kind of really would have been shoring up that, hey, whichever receiver breaks out for USC, that's a guy that I'm going to have. But again, I really like these late round wide receivers. We're going to talk about a few of them. And so I'm going to put myself in position to draft them by not filling up at wide receiver early. I like to end up with about 7 wide receivers. So I've got 5. We're in round 15, so I got 6 more picks. I'm going to take 2 of them. I'm going to feel pretty good. Anyway, let's get caught back up. Roydale Williams, Ruben Owens, and Rivaldo Fairweather have gone. I got to be honest, running back's getting kind of ugly, but there is a guy that I have my eye on. Actually, a few guys that I have my eye on that I can take at running back. So after Fairweather went Barryon Brown and Chris Tyree. Chris Tyree is one of my favorite late round wide receivers. I probably would have taken him if he fell to me here at 179. Now I'm on the clock at 179. I'm going to go ahead and grab Benjamin Brahmer of Iowa State. In Feel pretty confident in that one. Let me make sure that LSU and Iowa State do not have the same bye weeks. Week 6, LSU is good. Week 9, Iowa State is good. Week 10, LSU. Okay, we're good. They do not have the same bye week. All right, so I can stick with 2 tight ends if I want to after taking Ben Brommer. We mentioned Nathan Carter as, available at the last pick. Well, he fell 2 whole rounds, and he's now available at he might be available, excuse me. I still got to wait 1 more pick. Might be available to me at pick 182. In terms of late round running backs, Dallin Hayden, I like. Donald Chaney, I like. Jaquez Moore, I like. Rashad Amos, I like. Damon Claiborne, I like. But you know what? With Carter falling all the way to me, that's kind of an easy pick in my opinion. Nathan Carter. Anytime you can get a guy that you thought about pretty much 2 whole rounds ago, later, 20 picks past ADP, I feel like that's pretty solid. So I'll gladly take Nathan Carter. I would have been comfortable taking him over Anthony Hankerson, but now I ended up getting him 24 picks after Anthony Hankerson. So feeling pretty good about that. So anyway, let's talk about these late round running back loves though. So Dallin Hayden at Colorado. Yes, we know Colorado is going to throw the ball all over the field. Dallin Hayden is a guy that when he was at Ohio State was always buried on the depth chart, but he would randomly pop. And I believe there was a game against Maryland in 2022. Someone can fact check me on this one if you want to. There's a game against Maryland in 2022 where he came in. Travion Henderson was hurt, Mayan Williams was hurt, and Dallin Hayden had like 30 fantasy points. And he's that type of explosive playmaker. He can catch passes out of the backfield. Now he's going to Colorado where they targeted Dylan Edwards a crap ton last year out of the backfield. And we saw Dylan Edwards have some explosive games last year out of the backfield. And I think he's a perfect profile for what they want to do. I think that he's going to have some pop games this year. And as a guy that you're probably getting as your 4th or 5th running back, you're getting a guy that's going to start on an explosive offense that schematically fits that offense. Dallin Hayden, very solid late round running back pick in my opinion. Another one I mentioned was Donald Chaney. So Louisville last year, they had Jawar Jordan, Isaac Garendo. They ran the ball a lot. Whether you think that's because they didn't trust Jack Plummer's passing, TBD, but it's an offense that created a ton of explosive plays in the run game, and now he appears to be the guy there to make it. Interestingly enough, Penny Boone, who's right above him in ADP, Penny Boone transferred into Louisville in the spring, realized he wasn't going to get the job, and left and went to UCF. So it leads me to think that Donald Chaney is going to get fed early and often if Penny Boone left as early as he did. And then Jaquez Moore for Duke is another late round running back I like because pretty much you think about Duke last year. We talked about the wide receivers with Moore and Calhoun, the other Moore and Calhoun. Well, Jaquez Moore split the backfield with Jordan Waters, and Jordan Waters is now at NC State. Long distance transfer there, transferring 8 miles from Duke to NC State. I kid because that in terms of Division I schools that are close to each other, I don't know how much closer it gets than the 3 schools in the triangle, if I'm being honest. So anyway, Waters is gone. Moore's going to be the guy that's there. And it's going to be a competent offense. The Duke offense pretty much since the David Cutcliffe era has always been competent. Even if they're not good, they're going to put up some points and they're going to get their guys fantasy points. So Jaquez Moore, 212. I think he's a really solid pick also. And then I want to talk about Rashad Amos. So look, he's a transfer from Miami of Ohio. The Ole Miss backfield is quite crowded, but Lane Kiffin kind of likes to lean on one back through all the time that he's had, doing his thing. He will kind of ride the hot hand in game, even he's 2 capable backs on the roster. Back when it was Judkins and I want to say Zach Evans went there. That was Judkins' freshman year. Both of them were very capable, but in game he would ride the hot hand, and you would very rarely see games where like both of them scored like 10 fantasy points. It was always like one of them got 25, the other got like 7 or something. And so Amos, it was very productive in Miami of Ohio. If he gets that job, or even if he just gets that job for a few games, you're getting him at the very end of the draft in one of the best offenses in all of college football. And that could be an absolutely home run pick, in my opinion. So we talked late round running backs there. Let's get caught back up with who has been drafted. After I took Nathan Carter, went Ulysses Bentley, another one of those Ole Miss running backs that could win the job. Chris Hilton Jr., one of my potential stacking options for LSU. Okay. Will Rogers, Amari Niblack, potential stacking option for Quinn Ewers. Kind of hurt at that one, but I didn't think he was going to fall all the way back to me anyway. Curtis Rourke, Garrett Oakley, tight end I like a lot. Nick Harbor, Peyton Thorne, Dylan Raiola, and Anthony Armstrong to end the 16th round. And look, we talked about backdoor stacks earlier. Peyton Thorne is a pretty solid backdoor stacking option. You can pair him with Cam Coleman. You can pair him with Rivaldo Fairweather. There's just options with who you can pair Peyton Thorne with down the road. If your argument is, well, if their season doesn't start out well, what if Thorne gets benched? I think that's a distinct possibility, but I also think that's kind of baked into the price. Auburn also has a deceptively easy schedule. Yes, they play Alabama in week 14, and so he probably won't be able to help you in the championship round in week 14, but he can certainly help you get there. Peyton Thorne, I don't think, is a bad backdoor stacking option. If you're at the end of the draft looking for a stack, I think you can take Thorne, Coleman, Fairweather, and feel pretty good. All right, so in the 17th round, holy crap, I'm one pick away already. I need to go ahead and get ready. Let's take a look. Okay, well, the tight ends that I was looking at pairing up have gone. So, 13 seconds. I don't want to take another running back. I don't want to take one of these quarterbacks right here. Crap, I'm going to get autoed. Nope, Zachary Franklin. Did I get him? I got him. Okay. Whew. So, Zachary Franklin, it says Ole Miss on his profile, but he actually just transferred to Illinois. Illinois absolutely fed Isaiah Williams with targets in the last 2 seasons. He's gone now, so they're going to need somebody to feed targets to, and Zachary Franklin was a supreme target earner at Texas San Antonio, and so I think that he could be a guy that's a very solid late-round wide receiver selection. All right, now I need to get ready because it's going to come back to me pretty quick. So I need another quarterback. I do, even though I've got 4 that I feel pretty good about. I need another one. I don't feel like I have to stack either. You know what? If I've got 4 pretty good ones, we can make this a Zevi Eckhouse team. You know what? Let's do that. I'm going to take Xavion Thomas of LSU right here. Because Xavion Thomas is a guy that could end up winning a starting job on this LSU offense and could definitely end up being a very productive player. We don't really know how that LSU receiver room is going to shake out yet. If Thomas ends up being a starter, then that value at 206 is going to be great. Could I have gotten him around later? Probably, but I really didn't feel the need to take anybody at the top of the board. I think there's a lot of guys right here that are not all that different from one another. And so Xavion Thomas, feel okay with that. And so now I know that in the last 2 rounds, I know that I want another quarterback and I want another pass catcher. I'm feeling good sitting at 5 running backs. I really am. And so I'm going to need another pass catcher, whether it's a receiver or a tight end, that's fine. I don't have to get a 3rd tight end because my 2 tight ends have different bye weeks. All 4 different bye weeks, in fact. Like they don't overlap at all, which is great. And neither of them have buys in the playoffs. But I can always take a 3rd one. Just to shore that position up. Even though I don't know, the more I think about it, like tight end, this might be a supremely hot take here, but tight end might not even matter at the end of the day, just because it's a one-off position and there's so few tight ends in college football that actually score a lot of fantasy points. I think what you can do if you want to kind of say, hey, tight end doesn't matter, is just take an early one like a Gadsden or a Keithy and just punt it in the last round of the draft. Or you can take 3 of them at the end of the draft, or maybe 2 of them. I've been going with a lot of the middle ground of taking like a Jolly or a Haz, and then like one really later in the draft, like a Brahmer or a Garrett Oakley. So those have been kind of my strategies. I don't think you have to take 3 tight ends. I don't think you have to take 2 tight ends. I think that it's probably the position that's going to feature the least amount of variance in terms of gaining ground on people in terms of making out of your pod. It will probably make a difference in week 12, 13, and 14, though, in terms of who actually makes it out of the playoff pod and who actually wins all the money. Okay, so I've kind of gotten behind on narrating the picks, though. So starting at round 17, we saw Chris Hudson of Washington State, Noah Thomas, Texas A&M, Sam Levitt, Arizona State, the potential backdoor stacking option like we talked about. I would have probably have taken him if he was available at my pick, if I'm being honest. Khalil Mullings, Ja'Cory Brooks. Ja'Cory Brooks is an interesting one from Louisville. He's being drafted as the 3rd Louisville receiver off the board. However, like his pedigree is like the best out of all of them in terms of what he was as a recruit in high school and the fact that he went to Alabama. We know that the Jeff Brom offense loves to feature one wide receiver. You think about his days at Purdue, Rondale Moore and Charlie Jones, among others. Last year, it was Jamari Thrash at Louisville. People expect it to be Colin Lacey this year, but what if it's Ja'Cory Brooks? That is a late-round wide receiver with home run potential. Pick 198, 17.6, Noah Whittington, followed by Alan Bowman, Dallin Hayden, very good value there at pick 200, Alex Orji, Ben Urasek, and then I took Zachary Franklin, followed by Micah Hudson of Texas Tech, Don Chaney of Louisville. I took Xavier Thomas at the 18-2, Graham Mertz, Kyle Morlock, Jalen Conyers. That's a late-round punt tight end I like out of Texas Tech. He went at pick 209, followed by Sam Roush, Pat Bryant, Jace Brown of Kansas State, Micah Bernard of Utah, Jordan Tyson of Arizona State, Jalen Knighton, and Penny Boone to end the 18th round. And then now we are kicking off round 19 with Jimmy Horn Jr. All right, so as we've been doing all that talking, right, I'm still stuck at 4 quarterbacks. I kind of alluded to this. I could decide to make this a Zevi Eckhouse team. We talked about how he could end up winning that starting job and just absolutely being like a nuke pick at the very end of drafts. Well, if there were ever a time for me to do it, it would be right now because I have 4 locked in, not going to get benched, solid, non-playoff bye-week quarterbacks in Nico, Nussmeier, Ewers, and Beck. That's a really solid QB core. And so if I were ever to do something like taking Zevi Eckhouse, this will be the group to do it with because I think you could make the argument that I don't even need a 5th quarterback, but I'm just so used to taking 5 quarterbacks that I feel comfortable taking one. And if I were to take it, like looking at the board, I've taken a little bit of Vandegrift. I've taken a little bit of Malik Murphy. I've taken a little bit of Tyler Van Dyke. I could stack Altmaier with Zachary Franklin. Anthony Calandria is an exciting player as well. I think he could have some upside if he is like the full-time starter. They really played quarterback roulette with him last year. I hated it for DFS purposes. But yeah, Eckhouse sitting there would be an option. Diego Pavia, I think, is going to be the starter at Vanderbilt. And we know Vanderbilt's going to be bad, but they have a weak non-conference schedule. Diego Pavia is a dual threat. Put up a ton of fantasy points last year at New Mexico State. So I think he's an option late in drafts, but I'm not going to take him here. Got 3 more picks before me, and I mentioned that I want to take a quarterback and a pass catcher. Well, I don't know. I might nuke that plan because Jacquez Moore of Duke is about to fall to me, and it's going to take all of my temptation not to take Jacquez Moore. Is there any other stacking partners I can take? So Brew McCoy, I don't think he's going to play a full season. I already got Xavier Thomas. Iowa State's fresh out of pass catchers. Texas, I could get – is Golden already been taken? Matthew Golden I could take. You know what? Let's go ahead and kind of end the drama here. I am going to take Zevi Eckhouse here. I think this is a bold move, but I think it could pay off if he ends up winning that starting job. And it's pretty low risk for me because I already have the 4 locked-in starting quarterbacks. So I can take either a tight end or a receiver here. I have drafted a lot of 5-5, 8-2 and a lot of 5-5, 7-3 teams. Looking at my running back room, I really, really like Jacquez Moore, but I don't really feel the need to take him, if I'm being honest. You know what? Actually, Daniel Jackson of Iowa State is still here. You know what? Let me just go ahead and add on to that stack. Why not? Daniel Jackson of Iowa State. That way, if Rocco Becht ends up being one of my 2 starting quarterbacks in a given week, then it would stand the reason that Jalen Noel or Daniel Jackson or Ben Brahmer is going to have a really solid game. So, interesting bet that I made for myself there, but I'm okay with it. I really think I've drafted the type of team that has the upside that can win this type of tournament, but also could absolutely finish 10th in the pod. And what I mean by that is the pick of Zevi Eckhouse could give me a absolute home run or an absolute pop fly there with my last quarterback picked. I really like my running back room. I've got 5 guys who are going to be the workhorse running back for their team. Feel pretty comfortable with those. The wide receiver room, I didn't get any of the top guys. I didn't take a wide receiver until round 5 with Isaiah Bond, but I have a lot of guys. I kind of made up for the top end quality with getting a lot of quantity and getting a lot of guys who are stacked up. I got Isaiah Bond stacked up. I got both the Iowa State receivers stacked up. I got Xavier Thomas stacked up. And then the guys who are not stacked up are guys who have home run potential. Zachariah Branch of USC, we talked about him. Denzel Boston, same thing. Jordan Hudson of SMU, I think he ends up being their wide receiver 1. I don't think I talked about him enough. SMU last year did not have to throw the ball because they just kind of dominated the American Athletic Conference. Now they're in the ACC. It's a step up in competition. It's actually a fairly soft ACC schedule, and I do think he projects to be their wide receiver 1. And then Zachary Franklin could just absolutely be a target monster for Illinois, and we got him as well. All right, so let's get caught back up with the picks. Jimmy Horn Jr. started the 19th round, followed by Rashad Amos, Keanu Hill, Turner of Louisville, Dylan Bell of Georgia, Tyler Brown of Clemson, Lawrence Arnold, Jordan Watkins, Luke Altmaier, Antonio Williams. I took Zevi Eckhouse. Xavier Townsend, who I like as a late-round receiver target, went at 228. Jalen Glover started the 20th round, followed by Daniel Jackson, Cole Taylor, and I hate how Underdog automatically kicks me out. Hold on. Gotta scroll. There we go. Jalen Glover, Daniel Jackson, Cole Taylor, Diego Pavia actually got taken in this league. I've seen a lot where he doesn't get drafted. Don't mind that pick in the 20th round. Jamal Banks, again, don't mind that pick in the 20th round either. He could potentially be wide receiver 1 for a very good young quarterback in Nebraska. Jacquez Moore went all the way at pick 234. Man, that is a value for a dicker there. Kai Robichaux, Lemon of USC. I believe his first name is Mackay. G. Scott, Ohio State tight end. That's one I'm not all that familiar with. I'm going pick 237. I suppose he is the Cade Stover successor. Damon Claiborne, 238. Brett Norfleet, 239. And Brock Vandegrift at 240. All right, so what we ended up with on my team, we kind of broke it down already, but we got a 5-5-8-2. The 2 tight ends that I got have separate bye weeks, so I was comfortable doing the 2 tight ends. Like I said, I've kind of got a working theory that tight end isn't going to matter all that much in the first 12 weeks anyway. And so I've got 2 guys that do not have playoff buys and are stacked with their quarterbacks to give me weekly upside in weeks 12, 13, and 14. All right, so that was our live draft for Best Bowl Mania. So pretty much, y'all, that's all we got here for this episode. If you want to have, any kind of discussion on Best Bowl Mania or Underdog Best Ball, let me know in the comments. Reach out to me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. Also, you can subscribe to the Patreon. The rankings are going to be going up on the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. And if you are looking to get in on the Underdog action, or literally any other DFS sportsbook, player prop site, whatever, check the description because I've got all my promo codes in the description, but also signupexpert.com/Mike's Picks. We have got, I thought I was sharing my screen, my bad. Now I am. We have got all of our promo codes at signupexpert.com/Mike's Picks. It shows me a lot of support if you use those promo codes on there as well. So to recap, let me know what you think on Twitter or in the comment section at Mike's Money Picks on Twitter. rankings are going to be on the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike'sMoneyPicks. I also will have a weekly rankings, weekly articles with my DFS cores for every single college football slate, as well as every NFL slate once the regular season begins. So if you want to get in on that, make sure you go to the Patreon. All right, but y'all, that is going to do it for this draft. That was a little bit of a slow draft, if I'm being honest, with how long that took. I think there were a lot of guys that let the clock roll down. So this ended up being a little longer episode than I thought, but very happy to get the draft in. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully, I gave enough with the commentary so that way you guys knew what was going on and you guys knew how it went. If you like the video, please hit the like button. It helps me out a ton when you guys do that. And make sure you subscribe to the channel so that way you can be with us for the rest of our college football best ball content, as well as all of our regular season college football DFS content that is going to be coming your way. But that's going to do it for this episode here, guys. Thank you guys for watching and listening to this point, and best of luck in all your endeavors with college football best ball this season. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.